Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rux, I'm Western Tropical Astrologer, and today we're going to be talking about the transit of the North Node through Pisces and of the South Node through Virgo. This has begun on the 11th, 12th of January, and it's going to last until July of 2026, so for approximately a year and a half. The last time when the nodal axis was transiting this pair of signs, specifically North Node in Pisces and South Node in Virgo, was between June 2006 and December 2007. And if we go way back, this also happened between December 87 and May 1989. So some of you who were born at these moments in time, throughout these time frames, some of you might actually be experiencing what we call the nodal return. Now, before I dive into the astrology, before I dive into what this means for you, let me take a little bit of a step back and explain what are the nodes? Why should you care? In a nutshell, why are they so important? So, the North Node and the South Node, which are always in opposition to each other, exactly in opposition, they are the nodes, they're called the nodes of the moon. They are not planets, however, they are as important, as impactful as planets. They are mathematical points indicating where in the sky the path of the moon intersects the ecliptic. What is the ecliptic? The ecliptic is the apparent path of the sun around the earth. Obviously, we know that the sun does not revolve around the earth, but the other way around. Essentially, the ecliptic is this sort of like band in the sky through which we see the sun moving. And this gives us our seasons here down on planet Earth. So the nodal axis spends 19 months in a sign. It is said that it represents a magical threshold between this world and other worlds, according to Claire Martin. The nodal axis is also called the axis of destiny and fated encounters. The nodes are very, very strongly associated with a sense of destiny and fatedness. It almost feels as if they bring, so the transits of the nodes, and also the nodes in our natal chart, it might feel like they bring into our lives fated circumstances, which is why the nodes are also very strongly associated with our path of karmic evolutionary growth. The North Node is very strongly associated with our mission and purpose in terms of what we are here to learn at a soul level in this lifetime. The South Node is associated with past lives. It is also associated with our comfort zone to an extent, and with experiences, maybe skills that we are very familiar with. It might be also indicative, but we obviously can't say for sure because we can't travel back. It might also be indicative of past life circumstances, which is why, again, the South Node is likely to correspond very strongly to patterns in our lives that feel very, very familiar. I was about to say easy, but familiarity is not always easy and it's not always pleasant. However, I think life experience is probably going to prove me right. Many times we decide consciously or unconsciously to stick around and stay in a familiar hell rather than choose an unknown path, an unknown trajectory. But let's leave the philosophy aside for now. So the North Node, as I said, speaks of evolution generally. It speaks of innovation. It speaks of material manifestation, actually. I love how Judith Hill describes the effect and the action of the North Node, both in the natal chart as well as in transit. So the North Node brings a power surge, and it's very strongly associated with material manifestation in the 3D reality, which is why the North Node is also considered to be a point 8 of material success, even from a financial perspective. Keep that in mind when you're analyzing your own natal chart, when you're looking at your natal chart. The South Node, on the other hand, is associated with release, with a need to release things, to let go of things, to leave things behind, maybe people behind, maybe circumstances behind, especially via transit. So the South Node indicates where we're called to let go of certain elements of our life. And obviously we're going to talk about that today as to how that is likely to unfold for you based off of the transit of the North Node through Pisces and of the South Node through Virgo. The South Node is also associated with people from the past, whereas the North Node can bring in people that are likely to help us fulfill our destiny in some shape or form. If we think of the North Node as a point that brings in a power surge, so the celestial tides come into manifestation, the South Node can bring with it a power outage. Now, in Eastern traditions, the South Node is considered to be a very spiritual point, and they actually prefer the South Node to the North Node. They consider the North Node to be greedy, materialistic, etc., etc. Whereas the South Node has to do with letting go, detachment, not attaching ourselves to the 3D plane of reality. However, in the West, we actually, and I'm personally a big fan of the North Node, we might prefer the North Node from a cultural perspective, from maybe a philosophical perspective also, because the North Node is associated with material gain and material fulfillment, and the South Node with potential loss, I will say. The South Node can also be a point of self-undoing. So if we do too much of the South Node, we might feel like it's draining us, and we might feel like we're losing ourselves. We might feel like we are not having a tight grip on the 3D reality part of our life. So I am going to also remind you, or maybe this is the first time that you hear of this, that the North Node and the South Node are also called the head of the dragon and the tail of the dragon. So the North Node is the head, so things come in through the head, and the South Node is where things are excreted out of the system. And we actually need both, because we can't just kind of like gorge on experiences and not let go of anything. We accumulate, but we also have to release things. We have to let go of things. We have to make room for the new. So we need both the North Node and the South Node. I've recently seen some astrologers actually talk about having to balance the nodes. I'd say so, having to do both, and I partially agree with them. As in, we can't completely get rid of the South Node, especially in our natal chart. So we have it, and I do see it as a natural resource, as something that we do very well, as something that we're very trained in. But I also see the North Node as being the path of conscious, intentional choice. So we have to use our South Node to obtain what the North Node is asking us to go towards, to attain, to materialize, to manifest, to choose, let's say. And Judith Hill, again, I'm quoting her quite a bit. Well, I'm obviously paraphrasing. She is pretty much the expert on the nodes, if you ask me. And she recommends to people that they don't actually start businesses or choose professions aligned with their South Node, which is very interesting because, once again, I do see that as a point of kind of natural talent, of natural skill. However, because it's not necessarily a point of material manifestation, we might find ourselves losing more than we actually gain, especially when it comes to material return on investment, you could say. Now, the South Node can be a very spiritual point, however. And my recommendation generally would be to use it in a selfless manner. So if we lean on our South Node qualities and characteristics, and when it comes to the transits of the South Node as well, my recommendation would be to give without expecting anything in return, which is pretty much the definition of selflessness. I apologize. I just like threw my pen. Enough of that. Enough of the theory. Let's go back to the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. So once again, it's going to, the North Node is going to stay in Pisces until July of 2026. Look back at what happened in your life. Not just between June 2006 until December 2000. I apologize. Until December 2007. But also look back at what was going on in your life when we experienced 9 years ago eclipses on the Pisces Virgo axis once again. But this was when the nodes were kind of like in the in the sort of like opposite placement. Okay, it looks like I'm trying to say a lot. I do apologize. I know it's tremendously unpleasant to listen to someone cough on camera, but here we are. Give me 1 second. I'm not even gonna stop the recording. Tears are coming. Not sad tears, but actually cough tears. Here I am talking about the North Node in Pisces and tears are popping up. So have a think about what was going on in your life, folks. The last time when eclipses were happening on the Pisces Virgo axis, which was between, let's see. Let me just go back in time. March 2015 all the way until February 2017. Again, because the eclipses happen with the nodal axis, so this could give you a very, very good indication of some of the types of themes and events that you can expect to see unfold in your life during the transit of the nodal axis this time. But I repeat, remember that 2015, 2016, and so on, the nodes were in kind of like the opposite position. So the North Node was in Virgo and the South Node was in Pisces. Let me go back to my notes. I had to take a second there, you know, with the coughing and all of that. When are we likely to feel the effects of the transit of the nodal axis the most? When are they likely to be the most obvious this time around? Well, of course, at the time of the eclipses. You guessed it. Maybe you didn't. So we're going to have eclipses happening on the Virgo Pisces axis this year in 2025. In March, in September, so we've got an eclipse on the 13th of March, a lunar eclipse in Virgo. We've got an eclipse, a lunar eclipse in Pisces on the 7th of September. We've got a solar eclipse in Virgo on the 21st of September. We have next year in 2026, on the 3rd of March, a lunar eclipse in Virgo, and next year, 2026, 28th of August, a lunar eclipse in Pisces. And there's going to be one last eclipse on this axis, even though the nodes have already changed signs, in 2027 on the 20th of February 2027 at 2 degrees of Virgo. So keep in mind, spring, autumn-ish eclipse season is coming up this year as well as next year, and you might see in a very kind of like obvious manner the effects of the nodes transiting through the Pisces Virgo axis. Now, you might be wondering, who's going to feel the transits of the nodes through Pisces and Virgo the most? Definitely those of you who have planets or angles in the natal chart, such as the ascendant, the midheaven. Those of you who have planets or angles in Pisces, in Virgo, in Gemini, and in Sagittarius. Now, this is probably going to be extra geeky, and maybe, I don't know if it's going to be of use unless you have your natal chart in front of you, but those of you who are going to have eclipses activating your natal planets or angles in Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius, you are the ones who will probably feel the most impactful, who are going to see the most impactful, the most significant shifts happening in your lives. So this year, 13th of March, the lunar eclipse in Virgo is happening at 24 degrees of Virgo. Then on the 7th of September, we have a lunar eclipse in Pisces at 15 degrees of Pisces. And we've got a solar eclipse, 21st of September at 29 degrees of Virgo. So if you want to write that down, be my guest. Now, let's say you don't have planets around these degrees, but you have maybe your sun at 21 degrees of Virgo. Just putting it out there. You're still going to feel the transits of the nodal axis, especially when the nodes reach the degree of your planets. So when there's going to be, especially a conjunction. I mean, you might feel the square, but the conjunction is probably going to be felt the most. So the south node, for example, might connect with your sun in Virgo, and that might result in some sort of a release of an old identity in some shape or form, or saying goodbye to an important male figure in your life. Maybe someone's going out of your life, maybe you're saying goodbye to a boss, or an important maybe like paternal figure of some sorts. The eclipses will also be very strongly activated. This is the last kind of very technical detail and very important period that I want to flag to you. The eclipses will also be very strongly activated by the transit of Mars through Virgo, which is going to happen. This is a much longer transit, but it's when Mars connects or goes through the portion of Virgo where the eclipse happened. This is happening between the 4th until the 9th of June. This year, 2025. I would also pay attention to the last week of May and to the first week of, obviously, as I've said June. I would also pay attention to the second half of November, when Mars in Sagittarius is going to square the degree of the eclipse, of another eclipse that's happening on the Virgo Pisces axis. I know that you're here mainly because you want to figure out, is this impacting me or not? And we're getting to that. My major recommendation, folks, would be to listen to the forecast, to the horoscope, if you will, for your rising sign, for your ascendant, because we're going to talk about the transits of the nodes, and the closest thing that you can get to a personal reading when it comes to these general horoscopes is the update for your rising sign, because the transits happen in our natal chart based off of how the houses in the natal chart are spread out, and everything in the natal chart starts from the ascendant. And especially in my practice, because I use the whole sign house system, the ascendant also gives us the first house. So let's say you are a Cancer ascendant. Cancer is going to be in your first house. Leo is going to be in your second house. Virgo in your third house. So the South Node is going to be transiting the third house. So please, once again, this is a very long way of saying, listen to the update for your ascendant. Before we go into each of the 12 zodiac signs, into the main points that you can expect to see unfolding in your life, I do want to flag that at a collective level, we've already seen some of the effects of the nodal axis changing signs taking place, or kind of like starting to materialize. So as the North Node moved out of Aries, where it's been for the past year and a half, since the middle of 2023 until January of 2025, as the North Node has moved out of Aries, we've seen the ceasefire in Gaza take place. The North Node over the next year and a half is going to strengthen and is going to amplify activities, experiences at a collective level associated with Pisces, which can be very spiritual activities, activities also connected with healing, potentially with medicine, but I'm looking more at holistic medicine. Pisces is also very strongly associated with drugs, We can also see a surge in energy around topics associated with the imagination, so maybe virtual reality, the world of like fantasy, dreams, and so on. The North Node also, as I said, strengthens things from a material perspective. So there might be a surge in maybe, let's say, businesses in the spiritual space, or businesses in the space of, in the realm of healing, for example. We might also appreciate a lot more Piscean qualities of compassion, of empathy. There is also a dark side to Pisces, however, which is escapism and complete kind of like loss of self and of boundaries. The South Node is going to weaken. So again, the South Node is a point of things being released and of power outage. The South Node is likely to weaken maybe more kind of like technical fields, I wanna say, because Virgo is the expert, the specialist of the zodiac. There might be less demand for maybe people in technical roles or positions. We might also, from a collective perspective, let go of very kind of like critical, hyper analytical, hyper technical, hyper kind of like fastidious approaches or attitudes towards life. From a medical perspective, the South Node going through Virgo can weaken digestion. So just a few things that I wanted to flag at a collective level. Now, I'm going to go into the update for each of the 12 zodiac signs. Remember that, however, if you want to work with me on a one-to-one basis, on a personal kind of like one-to-one basis, I'm a full-time consulting astrologer. I work with clients daily. It is my passion to help people reconnect with their soul's intentions, reconnect with their mission and purpose, better understand themselves and the timeline of their lives. I am a strong believer in working with the celestial tides and swimming with the tide rather than against it. So if you want to work with me, you can find me on my website, which is writteninthestars-astrology.com. I am taking bookings for end of February and for March. Probably when I release this video, it's going to be March more than anything else. The waiting time after you make the booking is around a month to a month and a half. There's also an emergency reading option on my website. You're going to find the link in the description box and in the pinned comment. Without further ado, Aries, I hope you haven't lost your patience. Here we are. So, Aries suns and Aries risings, especially Aries risings. I do apologize, Aries. North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. For the next year and a half, so January 2025 until July of 2026, the North Node is likely to bring in and to kind of like strengthen your experiences in the realm of dreams, relaxation, retreat. So you are actually very strongly supported in getting away from the world, taking time for yourselves, Aries, maybe taking time off, potentially also taking time to look after your mental health. Take the time to maybe establish a spiritual practice. That is what the North Node supports you with very, very strongly. Take the time to rest if you haven't done so. You might also feel like potentially people, circumstances, experiences are coming into your life that are here to connect you with maybe the parts of yourselves that you have either ignored or repressed or haven't paid sufficient attention to. These people and these experiences might also make you very, very highly aware of your patterns of self-undoing and tendency towards self-sabotage. You may also be very inspired to create things behind the scenes. Speaking of behind the scenes, if you decide to, again, take some time off, if you decide to get away from the world, if you decide to go on a retreat, if you decide to go on a pilgrimage, this is a beautiful year and a half to do so. And you don't have to do this throughout the entire year, but I repeat, it is a good time to maybe put it in the calendar. Now, the South Node transiting the 6th house in Virgo is potentially inviting you to let go of one or several of the following. There is a possibility you might let go of a job over the next year and a half. You might let go of maybe some of the existing ways of working that have been very important in your day-to-day job so far. So you might, if you don't leave your job or if you don't let go of it, you might let go of the way that you have worked so far. There's also a possibility that people might exit your life from the work sector. So it could be colleagues. There could be restructurings in the workspace. Maybe if you work for yourselves, my dear Aries, you might say goodbye to certain clients. You're also invited to release, Aries, some of the existing habits that you've got, that you engage in on a day-to-day basis, that are not supporting your health, wellness, and well-being. And I dare say that you are mostly invited to take care of your mental health in the next year and a half. There could be some things popping up also on the physical level, maybe having to address certain health challenges. But overall, I would dig deep and ask myself, is this just my body telling me to rest, essentially? Up to you to make that call. My dear Taurus, Taurus suns and Taurus risings. The North Node, let's see. The North Node, my dear Taurus, has entered Pisces in your 11th house. And it's going to stay there all the way until July of 2026. Yeah, that's right. New people are coming into your life. Maybe new friends, maybe new communities, maybe new organizations. You're actually very strongly supported in broadening your community, in collaborating with people from organizations whose aims, whose goals are aligned with your own goals. You are strongly supported in expanding your audience if you have an audience. You're also very strongly supported in doing things in collaboration with friends, with peers, maybe even with people in professional organizations that are somehow connected with the work that you do. Friendship is likely to get a boost from this transit. So as I said, you might make new friends. There could be big things happening in the lives of your existing friends. I'd say there might be the sense of life evolving for them. And generally, if you do need to make things happen, I would not hesitate to ask for support from friends or maybe peers. Now, the South Node, transiting the 5th house, is saying that you might need to say goodbye or release or just kind of like spend less time engaging in some of the activities that have been a source of enjoyment in your life so far. You might also say goodbye to maybe some old creative projects. You might spend less time focused on your own kind of like individual creative projects, my dear Taurians. If you have children, there is a possibility that maybe they're getting out of the house, they're entering a new stage of development, maybe they're going to university, maybe they're going to, I don't know, like kindergarten, nursery, something like that. So it does feel like you're kind of like taking the focus a little bit off children. It doesn't mean that if you have kids, they're not going to be important anymore, because probably that's out of the question. They will be incredibly significant throughout your entire life, but it may feel like the focus is being taken off of children. There's also a chance that you might realize at the end of this transit, so sometime in 2026, that you no longer like the things that you used to like. Maybe you used to have fun in a certain way, and you're like, yeah, this doesn't fill my cup anymore. It's just something that doesn't do it, that doesn't cut it for me anymore. You also seem to leave behind maybe potentially a more critical attitude when it comes to your creative projects, Taurians, as well as to your children, if you ask me. Geminis, Gemini suns and Gemini risings. My dear Geminis, the North Node in January has just entered your 10th house in Pisces, and the South Node your 4th house of home and family and living situation. So the celestial tides are coming in your house of career. What does that mean? You're very strongly supported to invest time, energy, resources, and potentially to have some really fated experiences and encounters in the professional space. So the North Node can bring in more responsibility, a better paid job, a better paid role, a better paid position. It can also bring in more prestigious job, a more prestigious role, a more prestigious position. Now, Saturn is still transiting your house of career, I know that, so probably if you are getting a boost professionally, it will come with added, as I said, responsibility, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't sign up for it. The North Node is very strongly supportive of you materializing, I want to say a vision, a dream from a career perspective. So if you have a dream, now is the time to follow it. Now is the time to pursue it. And maybe it's something that you've encountered significant challenges and obstacles with in the past. The tide of destiny is turning, and it's turning in your favor. The South Node transiting the 4th house is saying, okay, time to take the focus off of home life, off of family life, off of your private life. So you might be spending less time at home. You might be spending less time maybe doing work for the family or helping the family or being of service to the family. There is a possibility you might also be leaving behind in the next year and a half an existing home situation. So you might be selling a home. You might be selling a property. You might be... maybe even if it's not the main kind of property that you live in, maybe it's a family home. It does feel like it's time to release something that has been in your life for a while in terms of home, property, or living situation. There is a possibility that family members could also experience big new beginnings and endings in their life over the next year and a half. I'm especially looking at parents. So maybe let's say a parent is retiring, maybe they're moving to a different country, maybe they're selling their home and property, and so on. Now, if you are retired, for instance, with the North Node transiting the 10th house, my recommendation would be to get out of the house and to go out into the world, because even if you are retired, that doesn't mean that your contribution to society is done. A lot of people actually say, oh, Rox, I don't have a career. I don't care about work. I'm like, you might not care about work, or you might be retired, which is absolutely fine. That doesn't mean that you don't have something to offer to the world. And the North Node is saying it is time to offer things to the outside world, to your public life, to society at large. Cancerians, Cancer suns and Cancer risings. The North Node transiting the 9th house in Pisces and the South Node in your 3rd house in Virgo is likely to bring one or several of the following over the next year and a half. So you might have some really fated experiences or encounters with people, Cancerians, that change your worldview and your life perspective, that change your belief system, your life philosophy, that help you see the meaning of life in a new light. You may be exposed, for example, to different ways of making sense of reality, to different ways of kind of like seeing the big picture. You might be exposed to new and very enlightening and very illuminating for you, I'd say, maybe spiritual traditions, maybe ideas. The North Node is very supportive of you traveling, and I will say Saturn is still transiting Pisces, so maybe there is an element of like work and responsibility to the travel. But if you want to maybe kind of like spread your wings and, I don't know, open like a branch of your business somewhere abroad, maybe in a different country, this is the time to do so. The North Node is very supportive of you telling your story to the world through the 9th house. So if you want to market yourselves, Cancerians, or if you want to publish a book, for example, the North Node transiting the 9th house is very supportive of you working with publishers. There is also a possibility that people might come into your life who potentially, as I said, open you up not just to new ideas, but to new perspectives that you haven't yet considered, that maybe give you another boost or another, kind of surge of energy to explore beyond what you know. And it could be physically, but it could also be mentally or in terms of knowledge. The North Node is also very supportive of you potentially signing up for different academic projects. So if you wanted, for example, to sign up for a PhD or to, I don't know, go for your master's, Now's the time to do so. Now, the South Node, on the other hand, transiting the third house, is saying, okay, it's time to take your focus off of the local environment, off of the local kind of like neighborhood. You might be doing less interacting, less talking, less engaging with neighbors, but maybe also with colleagues, siblings. Maybe there's less time to spend with them. Speaking of siblings, over the next year and a half, it may feel like siblings are releasing some things from their life or letting go of some things from their life. Siblings might experience some big shifts over the next year and a half, and cousins as well. And these shifts might involve letting go of a job or letting go of an existing attitude towards life. I dare say, Cancerians, that it's not the best time to buy a new car over the next year and a half. You might have to maybe fix your existing mode of transportation, but I wouldn't necessarily invest in something very, I don't know, expensive, because you might have to like repair it over and over and over again. And you might also say goodbye to some people. I want to say maybe colleagues or neighbors in particular over the next year and a half. Leos, Leo suns and Leo risings. The North Node has entered Pisces in your 8th house, and the South Node has entered Virgo in your 2nd house, Leos. What does that mean? It means that over the next year and a half, you're probably going to experience some big shifts in terms of your material and financial situation, as well as in terms of your value system. So you might leave behind over the next year and a half some of your existing values around perfectionism and doing things in a very kind of like meticulous, fastidious way. You might leave behind some of your critical kind of like tendencies and some of the tendencies to be very hard on both yourselves as well as on other people's work. You might also let go of, in the next year and a half, Leos, you might let go of an existing source of income. That is very, very, very possible. There's also a high possibility that if you don't let go of an existing source of income, you might have to pay for a lot of things. And you might release a lot of money, let's say, over the next year and a half. You might even need to maybe give some of your money to help someone else. So you might serve someone else with your own resources, but it might be something that you need to do selflessly, I want to say. You might not necessarily see the money back. So if someone does ask you for a loan, or if someone needs your financial support, I'm not going to say, okay, don't help them, because maybe they're someone who is very dear to you, but do keep in mind that they might not give it back. And I think that's okay in this situation. The South Node is also associated with karmic debt. So you might have some karmic debts to pay, literally through finances, through material developments. The North Node in the 8th house is very supportive of you benefiting from other people's resources. So if you need to apply for a loan, a mortgage, a scholarship, a sponsorship over the next year and a half, my recommendation would be to go ahead and do it. The North Node transiting the 8th house is also supportive of your partner's financial resources. So if you are in a relationship or if you have a business partner, I want to say lean on them, because they're seeing a surge in some shape or form. You're also very strongly supported, Leos, in the next year and a half to dive into your fears, your sources of anguish, to see where are they coming from, to look at your vulnerabilities in the eye, to look at what you perceive to be your weaknesses in the eye and say, okay, let me make friends with them. Let me understand them. Let me explore them. Let me nourish this softer side of me. Speaking of the softer side, you're very strongly supported in building a much closer bond with someone in your life. Someone who you are emotionally attached to and who is emotionally attached to you in turn. And it could be a partner, but it could also be someone who is just kind of like very close to your heart, Leos. Virgos, Virgo suns and Virgo risings. Let's see what's going on for you, Virgos, in the next year and a half. So the North Node enters your 7th house, where it has already entered, because I know I'm releasing this very late, alas. The North Node has entered Pisces in your 7th house. So over the next year and a half, you are likely to benefit tremendously from the following: relationships, partnerships, collaborations, advisors, consultants. Now, you are also likely to benefit materially. So let's say your work involves advising others. You might benefit materially from your kind of like one-to-one relationships with others. So you might attract more clients. Let's say you're a therapist. You might attract a lot more clients into your life, into your practice. Let's say you need therapy. You might attract the right person that helps you grow and evolve, and that helps you accept the parts of yourself that you have a harder time making friends with, Virgos, and that maybe you project onto others. If you find yourselves in a pickle, if, I don't know, things are happening in your life and you're thinking, oh my God, this is so hard, I need support, do not hesitate to reach out to an advisor, a consultant, someone who can guide you, someone who can help you. And also, if you have a partner, do not hesitate to lean on your partner. It could be a romantic partner, but it could also be a business partner, because you benefit from partnerships, okay? Now, the North Node transiting the 7th house, however, is also likely to benefit open adversaries. So I know this is probably something that you might not, I mean, people don't want to hear about this, but if you are in a trial, in a legal setup, in a court of law, the North Node is likely to strengthen your opposition. So if you can reach maybe a settlement of some sorts, if you can reach a middle ground of some sorts, I'd say do it, because it's probably going to be worth it, and you're not going to waste your time and energy and resources trying to fight against this person who, for whatever reason, has more support than you have. Maybe it feels like they have cosmic support, even if they're not exactly in the right. Now, if you are in a legal kind of set of circumstances where you need help, you can, however, benefit dramatically from the guidance of an attorney, of a counselor. So once again, get support on that front if you find yourselves in this kind of situation. The South Node transiting the 1st house. What does that mean? What is that likely to bring? So it looks like over the next year and a half, you are releasing an old view of yourselves, Virgos. You're also probably releasing an old way of approaching reality, an old attitude that you had towards life. So if you approach reality with a view to maybe fix things and find solutions and be of service, the South Node is coming in and it's saying, you know what, sometimes you don't have to be of service, and sometimes no matter how hard you try to fix a situation or help someone or do the right thing, or maybe just kind of like analyze things and find a logical solution, it won't work out. So you might need to make peace with the fact that logic isn't always the answer, which we know it isn't, but hey. The South Node might also potentially, I'm gonna say, diminish your life force to an extent. What does that mean? You might be a little bit more tired, so you might need more time to rest. You might need more time to recuperate. Maybe after, I don't know, like working out or going to the gym or things like that. Speaking of going to the gym and working out, the South Node moving through the 1st house says that something needs to shift in terms of your attitude towards your physical body. So whatever you've been doing in relation to the physical body and however you've been kind of like treating yourselves, Virgos, it does not seem to be working anymore. So you need to do things differently. And if you've been picking yourselves apart, if you've been hypercritical when it comes to, I don't know, like analyzing your face or something like that, the South Node comes in and it's almost like the universe is sending you this message saying, it's a never-ending story. It's a slippery slope to go down on, to constantly kind of like pick yourselves apart and try to improve things, and I don't know, like try to get like all sorts of like facial kind of like interventions or stuff like that. Sometimes you just have to go with the flow and maybe even focus on others. My recommendation would be over the next year and a half, Virgos, to focus on partnerships, to focus on relationships rather than over kind of like analyzing or criticizing or investing a tremendous amount of energy into maybe physical tweaks, let's say. Libras. Libra suns and Libra risings, but especially Libra risings. The North Node has entered your 6th house in Pisces in January, and the South Node has entered your 12th house until July of 2026. What does that mean? Well, I have good news, and I'm just gonna say I mostly have good news. So why am I kind of like putting things into this this perspective, Libras? You've been having probably quite a hard time when it comes to your health and your work and your daily routines since Saturn entered your 6th house in March of 2023. So if you've been experiencing difficulties, hardships, challenges, work-wise and health-wise, the North Node comes in and it helps you find long-term solutions, and it helps you heal whatever needs to be healed from a health perspective. It's also likely to bring you work. If you've been struggling with work, if you've been struggling with finding work, if you've been struggling with maybe making your job work for you, if you've been having a hard time with relationships at work, the North Node coming in and saying, okay, let's make this happen. Let me give you a boost. Let me give you some help. So there is a very high possibility that you're going to be very busy at work over the next year and a half. If you're looking for jobs, you're probably going to find a new job, and it is probably going to come with responsibility. It is probably not going to feel like an easy job, but it does feel aligned with some of the resources that you have kind of like honed since 2023, since the spring of 2023. The North Node can also bring in new habits. I dare say that you probably need new habits when it comes to your health and when it comes to your overall wellness. So you might be a lot more disciplined when it comes to not just habits around, let's say, working out, but habits around resting more, sleeping well, sleeping better, maybe habits that have a certain spiritual or metaphysical or mystical side to them. You might decide, okay, I'm going to make meditation a daily thing. I am going to stick to this schedule. I'm going to be consistent because I've seen it working. Consistency is key. The North Node can also bring in people. So you might connect with the right support in the health space, but also maybe in the kind of like spiritual space to help you implement these new habits. The South Node going through your 12th house is essentially saying, okay, it's time to release, it's time to let go of maybe the time that you've spent in isolation, the time that you've spent retreating from the world, the time that you've spent in anonymity, I wanna say, Libras. So if you've been retreating from the world, if you've been kind of like in this sort of like cocoon, if you've been maybe working at something behind the scenes, the South Node comes in and says, okay, time to kind of like clear things out. It's not necessarily the time to focus on your mental health for the next year and a half. Now, of course, generally, we know that health is a holistic thing, and mental health and physical health and emotional health, they all go hand in hand. But if you've been doing, let's say, a lot of therapy, but you haven't been implementing maybe new habits on a day-to-day basis, therapy on its own is probably not going to take you places. But if you decide, okay, I'm going to take the proverbial bull by the horns, and I'm going to day in and day out take action when it comes to improving my health, that's where you're getting help. That's where you're getting support. The South Node is also maybe asking you to release any sort of like hypercritical tendencies that you have that might have been a source of self-sabotage. If you've also been doing a lot of invisible work, the South Node transiting your 12th house is saying, no, enough with the invisible work, enough with the work behind the scenes. It's time to make your work visible. It's time to interact with people. It's time to be of service in a day-to-day manner. And my favorite about the transit of the South Node in the 12th house is essentially the fact that it may weaken any hidden enemies that you've got. Now, they can be actual, like, people, but most of the times they're not. Most of the times, the South Node weakens your own patterns of self-sabotage. So you might self-sabotage a lot less. You might become aware of how you've been doing that and say, okay, I'm much more aware. I'm gonna stop doing all of this. Scorpios. Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings, especially Scorpio risings. The North Node has entered Pisces in your 5th house, and the South Node has entered Virgo in your 11th house for the next year and a half. So new people are probably coming in connected with your 5th house, Scorpios. People that might feel in some shape or form connected with your fate, with your destiny. If you're single, the North Node in the 5th house can bring new romance. It can bring people who you have a lot of fun with, people who you are romantically attracted to, people who you have great chemistry with. The North Node can also bring children. Now, if you are looking to get pregnant, it can help with pregnancy, but it can also bring children maybe in the workspace. Maybe you start working with kids, or maybe you start maybe developing a stronger relationship with your own inner child. The North Node is also very supportive of you creating things, of tapping into your imagination, of saying yes to creative endeavors, to creative projects, and of saying yes to the activities, the circumstances that make you happy, just for the sake of it. You don't need anyone else in your life. You don't need to get approval from your peers. You don't need to do this together with other people. It's about you choosing to engage in whatever makes you happy. And there is probably a Piscean kind of like element to that. So it could be artistic activities. It could be activities of a spiritual nature. It could be activities that involve, I realize I should not say the word activity in this context. It could be choosing to relax more, choosing to get away from the world more. And that can be very enjoyable, Scorpios. The South Node transiting the 11th house is saying that over the next year and a half, you might be leaving behind some friendships, some communities, some organizations, and potentially some existing goals and your existing view of the future. So if you had a specific, maybe, I don't know, like vision in mind as to how your future should look like, the South Node is coming in and it's saying, yeah, you might need to revisit that. Is this really what's going to make you happy in the long term? Is this really what you want from your future? Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm gonna kind of like tip the scales in favor of no. Now, like I said, people might leave your life. That doesn't mean that anything bad is happening, but maybe a friend is moving away, or maybe you can no longer participate in community events that you used to participate in because, I don't know, maybe you're going to have a kid. The possibilities are multiple. The South Node, however, is saying this. This is not the time to seek external approval. This is not the time to seek approval from a community, from your peers, from like-minded individuals, because you might not get it. It's also not the time necessarily to build an audience. I wanna say it is the time to invest in your passions, your hobbies, your creative projects, your children, your kids. But the outside world is taking a little bit of a step back. I'd say. Sagittarius suns and Sagittarius risings, especially. You know how I say, please listen to the update for your rising sign. The North Node has entered Pisces in your 4th house of home, and the South Node has entered your 10th house of career until July of 2026. So you are receiving this sort of like cosmic boost when it comes to one or several of the following. Moving into a new home, finding your dream home, starting a family, or expanding the family, or connecting at a deeper level with your family, developing a stronger bond with family members. Buying a house, did I say that? I mean, relocating, buying a house, finding a new house, expanding your property sector. Spending time at home with the family is also, again, something that is very strongly supported by this transit. Reconnecting with the past and with your roots. is also on the list, Sagittarians. The South Node transiting the 10th house of career, public status, and public reputation is saying that you might leave behind an existing position professionally over the next year and a half. You might also notice that in the industry that you're in, things are changing, things are shifting. So the way that you've been doing your work in this sector, in this industry, is probably not going to be the way in which the industry will work moving forward, especially from July of 2026 onwards. It feels like you are going to have to do things differently. The landscape is shifting. This is not necessarily the time to grow your career, to grow your status, your reputation, to maybe, I don't know, invest heavily in a new website or new branding or anything like that. On the contrary, I would even go so far as to say that it may be wise to see what is exiting almost kind of like naturally this part of your life, and focus on what's close to home, focus on your private life, so that you can build after the South Node has exited this part of your chart. If you've been working for a company for a long time, the company might be sold, might get bought, leadership might change, leaders may retire, leaders may leave, your manager might leave. So again, things are shifting at the top. I would also be quite mindful of the fact that the South Node is associated with karmic debt. So there may be some karmic debts to pay in relation to your reputation coming up over the next year and a half. Now, these could be coming from this life, but they could also be coming from past lives. Now, you might believe in past lives or not. I personally do. If you notice that anything affects your status and your reputation, I would not necessarily try to fight it or try to resist it. I would say, okay, maybe this is a sign that this part of my work is done, or that this part of my career is done, and I need to kind of like shift gears and focus on something else, or do things differently. One thing that I would do with the South Node in the 10th house is I would focus on maybe charity, and that could actually paradoxically benefit your reputation. So I would not necessarily expect things to materialize in a really, really kind of like strong way career-wise over the next year and a half. But if you are looking to do charity work, if you're looking to, I don't know, volunteer, you could actually benefit from a reputational perspective. Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings. Especially Capricorn risings, the North Node has entered Pisces in your 3rd house, and the South Node has entered Virgo in your 9th house. So over the next year and a half, Capricorns, you're very strongly supported in learning new things. Not necessarily at an academic level. So this is not the time for your PhD, for your master's. This is the time for practical skills that you can apply on a day-to-day basis at work, or skills that you can apply in a kind of like in an immediate manner almost. Skills that maybe require you to be kind of like a student once again, to get off that high horse. And I'm not saying this, I realize it might be it might sound wrong, but to get off that high horse where you know where you think that you know how the world works, and to decide, you know what, I'm gonna think like a youngster once again. I'm gonna pretend that I'm in school. You might actually be in school. I'm gonna leave behind any sort of like preconceived notions, pre-existing like beliefs, maybe even suspend my existing belief system, and I'm gonna open up to new information. I'm gonna open up to new ways of thinking. I'm gonna open up to new skills. I'm becoming the student once again. Speaking of beliefs, there is a high chance that you are probably gonna leave behind in the next year and a half your existing belief system, maybe your existing relationship with religion, spirituality, philosophy, politics, potentially. The South Node is coming in, and it's making you very, very aware of how your existing belief system is no longer serving you. So if you are incredibly attached to your worldview and your beliefs, this might actually cause a little bit of suffering, which is why I'd say, okay, Capricorns, don't fight it. Be the student once again. Now, this is not necessarily the best time when it comes to publishing things, when it comes to marketing campaigns, also when it comes to traveling. So with the South Node transiting the 9th house, these areas of your life are somehow kind of like weakened. If you do have to travel, it might be for work. And if you have to travel for work, Capricorns, I would get insurance, travel insurance, health insurance, all of that. Karma might come in. Karma that needs to be paid might come in through the South Node and the 9th house. So if you do travel, and if you, I don't know, let's say lose your wallet or a piece of your luggage, I would almost see it as, okay, this was supposed to be kind of like taken away from my life. It's a debt repaid somehow. The South Node can also indicate that over the next year and a half, you might be saying goodbye to an existing mentor or teacher. Now, that doesn't mean that they're dying or anything like that, but they could just be exiting your life. So you might no longer work with them. You might no longer collaborate with them. The North Node transiting the 3rd house is also very supportive, Capricorns, of short distance traveling. So I say, take it easy with the long distance trips. And if you do have to travel, you have to travel, and that's totally fine, but do get insurance. Short distance travel is very strongly supported. You might also benefit from forging really strong ties with colleagues at work, maybe also with neighbors, and you are potentially likely to benefit from networking a great deal, including from a material perspective, Capricorn. So I would invest in that. And if you are writing anything, you may actually feel, I mean, I don't know, if you're a writer, a copywriter, if you need to write any sort of like presentations, if you need to write a book, you might actually see that there's a surge of inspiration coming in. Now, the North Node supports you with writing. If you have to maybe publish the book, I would wait for the South Node to get out of Virgo in July of 2026 before you actually go to a publisher, Capricorns. Aquarius suns, but especially Aquarius risings. My dear Aquarians, the North Node and the South Node are activating your financial axis over the next year and a half. So you are probably going to see some big shifts, big new beginnings, and maybe endings when it comes to your financial situation. Now, the endings, you might be very happy to hear of them. You might be getting rid of debt over the next year and a half, Aquarius. With the South Node transiting the 8th house, it's a great time to clear out those credit cards. It's a great time to pay off your debts. It is a great time to repay anyone who maybe you owe money to. It is, however, not a great time to apply for loans, investments, sponsorships, or scholarships. And it's also not the best of times when it comes to investing into other people's endeavors. On the contrary, I would maybe steer clear. But again, this is not financial advice. You're completely responsible for how you manage your finances, how you manage your resources, Aquarians. Finances, existing, so your kind of like own money. Your finances are probably going to see a surge, but not necessarily from investments. So existing investments may actually see a dip in value. If you want to sell, fantastic. If you are feeling like you're, I don't know, at a loss, you may need to wait at least until the South Node gets out of this part of your chart, July of 2026, in order for things to kind of like start climbing in terms of value. So if you need money quickly, you might need to potentially sell at a bit of a loss. The South Node might also weaken your partner's resources. So if you have a spouse or if you have a business partner, the South Node comes in and might take away some of their money, some of their resources. Maybe they have to, I don't know, help a family member. Let's say your spouse has some big expenses coming in. Maybe a parent needs their help, and you may no longer be able to rely on the partner's resources as much as you have relied so far, if you have in any shape or form. If anyone asks you for money, and if anyone asks you for a loan, I would be very cautious. I mean, if you do give them the money, I would not necessarily expect it to be paid back. I would give it selflessly. The South Node says, do things selflessly. So if you want to help someone, if you want to be of service, by all means, go ahead, but don't expect to be repaid. I dare say. Now, the South Node transiting the 8th house is also very supportive of you releasing fears, traumas, sources of crisis in your life. That sometimes also involves releasing maybe existing jobs or existing relationships. I'm not necessarily referring to romantic relationships. You might decide to stop working with someone, to stop working with, I don't know, like a client that is sucking the life out of you. For example, the North Node transiting your 2nd house, Aquarius, I love this. It's essentially meant to bring in more money, to expand your income, to expand your sources of income, to maybe bring in a new source of income, to help you expand your monetizable resources. So if you've been thinking, you know what, I need to take this course, I need to take this class, this is going to help me make more money, this is going to help me charge more, this is going to help me when it comes to going to my boss and asking for a raise, my recommendation would be to go ahead and do it. You might also have fated experiences and encounters when it comes to people coming into your life and helping you maybe make money in a new way, or helping you monetize your existing resources in a new way, and at the same time also helping you appreciate yourselves a lot more, Aquarians. And my dear Pisces, last but not least, Pisces suns, but especially Pisces risings. Now, Pisces suns, I'm going to say this, at some point the North Node is going to connect with your sun. What is that likely to bring? A surge in life force, in vitality, and a sense of feeling connected with your destiny and your mission and purpose and the person who you are meant to become in this lifetime, Pisces. Now, this is going to happen at some point in the next year and a half. Pisces suns, do check an ephemeris or do talk to an astrologer if you want to find out exactly when this is happening. The North Node for Pisces risings, transiting the 1st house, is likely to bring in a new, I want to say a new relationship with yourselves. A new way of seeing yourselves, a new way of connecting with the physical body. The North Node is actually likely to strengthen the physical body. Now, you might strengthen the physical body in what ways? Maybe in Piscean ways, maybe through potentially improving your body's immune response, maybe through going to reflexology kind of like sessions. So that in that sense, the body might be strengthened because like things are getting unblocked. Pisces obviously rules the feet, which is why I mentioned reflexology, I think that's the way to say it. You might also strengthen the body through spiritual activities, such as meditation, but also any activities that involve the use of the imagination. You might connect with your potential on a deeper level, especially when it comes to using your imaginative and artistic inclinations, but also your abilities when it comes to being psychic, or maybe when it comes to healing yourselves, to healing others. You might experience a tremendous maybe surge when it comes to your interest in healing overall, because Pisces is actually a sign very, very strongly associated with energetic healing, especially. The North Node is also saying, okay, maybe it's time for a new look. Maybe it's time to like cut your hair differently. Maybe it's time to, I don't know, like dress differently. It feels like you're becoming more than who you've been up until this point, especially Pisces risings. Now, I will say, over the next year and a half until July of 2026, my recommendation would be to put the focus and the spotlight on you. You do you, Pisces. The South Node is transiting the 7th house, which is saying the following. This is not the time to invest that much in relationships. It's not the time to look for a partner if you're single. It's not the time to look for a therapist. You might actually need to release certain people, such as maybe your accountant, your therapist, people who have been acting as consultants for you. Maybe an attorney, if you've been working with an attorney in any capacity. The South Node comes in and says, yeah, maybe you need like a different approach, a different touch, a different energy, let's say. Existing relationships may experience shifts, endings and new beginnings. Your partner might also experience potentially some sort of a loss in their life. It could be something connected with their health. So maybe they need to like replace something in the body, but it could also be something connected with work. Sometimes people, as I said, exit our life, but the South Node can also bring people from the past. So you might connect with people from past lives over the next year and a half. People who have maybe a karmic debt to pay to you, or you might have a karmic debt to pay to them. If anyone comes into your life and they're asking you for anything, especially any kind of service, I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm not going to say don't help them, but I am going to say if you do it, do not expect reciprocity because you're probably not going to get it. Do it selflessly because the South Node is a point of selfless giving rather than material kind of like manifestation. And for those of you who are looking to maybe go into business with a partner, I'm just going to say it. You might be better off on your own, Pisces, over the next year and a half. I would consider, I would weigh my options very, very carefully when it comes to business partnerships, because even though you might say, okay, this person on paper is super competent and they know what they're doing, all of that, maybe they have all the right credentials, partnerships don't seem to materialize things over the next year and a half. So just something to keep in mind. Now, folks, I want to thank you for sticking around for so long. I do hope that this is useful, and I do hope that you will let us know in the comments if you remember, how did the transit of the nodal axis the last time when it was moving through Pisces Virgo, how did that manifest in your life? What did that bring in your life? So once again, that happened between June 2006 until December 2007. I would also love to hear from you when it comes to the experience that you've had so far with the transit of the nodes. So for example, if you have a sun in Aries and the North Node in the past year and a half connected with your sun, how did that make you feel? Also, a reminder that if you want to work with me and if you want to see, okay, how does this actually play out for me on a personal level when it comes to my own chart? Because what we're doing here is general forecasting, but the most accurate kind of reading that you can get is obviously a personal astrological reading, a personal consultation. If you want to work with me, you can find me on my website, which is written in the stars-astrology.com. It's also in the pinned comments and in the description box, the same link that I've mentioned. I know I say this all the time, but if you like my content, don't forget to give it a like, a comment, a subscribe, a share. Everything helps with the engagement with the algorithm. And last but not least, I'm also active on Instagram. So if you are active as well, you can follow me at Rux Unbelievable. Rux Unbelievable in one word. That is my only Instagram account. If you see people messaging you pretending to be me, don't trust them, block them straight away. I'm not going to message you ever and say, oh, would you like to buy a reading from me? That's not going to happen. Rux Unbelievable in one word. Thank you once again for tuning in, and I will see you hopefully next time. Bye.